उपविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्.
This samatva, Bhagavad Gita has taken ultimately, the mind becomes absolutely even. That means it comes through the knowledge that everything is Atma alone. The whole universe, although it is full of infinite variety, this variety is only an expression of the soul. The whole infinite variety is only as if written on the consciousness. So it is an uniformity all over. That is the ultimate samatva. Atmaupammena sarvatra samam pashyati yo Arjuna. That one who sees everywhere as his Atma. That is the ultimate samatva. So it takes it to that level. Then transcending guna bondage. This I have discussed in great detail, that by utilizing sattva guna and rajoguna, you win over the tamoguna bondage. By applying more and more sattva, you win over the rajoguna bondage. Then finally, applying surrender and jajya bhavana, you win over the sattva guna bondage also. These are all coming in the 18th chapter towards the end. The surrender and guna, transcending guna bondage. Surrender. Finally, it is actually all the four are same. When you do it, there is no difference at all. It's a question of our liking, which one clicks and which one we follow. We can follow all the four. That is why we are saying fourfold, not four different sadhana. Whatever you do, if you actualize jajya attitude, automatically samatva will dawn. You will automatically transcend the guna bondage. Automatically you will start feeling surrendered nature of you. That everything is done by nature. I am only a witness to all these things. We become sakshi, witness. So surrender also, doing everything as an offering to the Lord, that everything is done by nature. I don't have any doership or enjoyship, no kartritva, no bhoktritva at all. Initially it is a sadhana that whenever kartritva comes, we surrender that, no, I am not the doer, it is the Lord's will. Let Lord's will be done. Maybe I am not becoming successful. Then we start getting affected by that. That is the time we have to think that, no, I am thinking like this, but maybe Lord's will, the nature's will is different. I should be ready to accept that also. In some of the movements, suppose the last movement, it was not becoming successful. Then Swamiji said that what can we do? We have done enough. Maybe the society is not ripe enough to accept this purity or this purification. It will come in its own manner. Why should we worry so much? We have done enough. For 6 years we have been fighting. We have done enough. So he will not get depressed by that. He will not get there won't be any affectation at all. We have done whatever we could do, and the society is not ready. Maybe we were over anxious to make the society all right. It is not the nature's will. So we accept. But this is a surrender while doing we may apply it. But finally one day when the knowledge dawns, we come to know that we don't have to surrender. We are already surrendered. We cannot do anything at all. But don't say that before. As long as you have the will, you have to apply the will. Then when we really understand the surrender, then our will becomes God's will, Lord's will, divine will. So this is just a summarization of the whole thing. This is what normally our spiritual sadhana is. What is that? Go to the right side first, non-interactional. Meditation, contemplation, introspection. Now the ultimate of this is the discovering the inmost presence. See what we call, I have told earlier also, what we call our awareness, our consciousness, the usual, in medical science also what we refer to as consciousness, It is, I am giving an illustration. Suppose the sunlight is coming from the top. You put a mirror there, and with the reflected beam from the sunlight, you can see the world. When you move the mirror, you can see everything with the reflected beam. Now, if you want to, if suppose the reflected beam, it is showing all, but if the mirror thinks that this beam is coming from myself, is it true? If the mirror thinks that this beam is, the source of the beam is the mirror, I, is it true? Because source is somewhere else. There might be millions of mirrors there. Each will have its own property. Some are twisted mirror, some are red mirror, some are green mirror, anything you can do. According to that, they will see the world. Suppose we had a microscopic vision in our eyes, the world will be looking entirely different. Suppose we develop 2 more indriyas, sensing magnetism and electricity, then also the world will be different. So it depends on what is the mirror. It will show according to that. The reflected beam will be according to that. Now suppose one day we want to find out that, well, this consciousness, where from it is coming. I am considering that to be I, the mirror, but is it really the mirror or something else? Then what do we have to do? To look into the original source. What do you do in that case? The mirror is seeing everything with its secondary beam, that is its consciousness. With that he wants to see who is the source of that. Is it not so? So the mirror has to be turned to look into the original source. Is it not so? That is what we are doing in meditation. Normally our awareness is always about the external thing. When we close our eyes, it looks into the thoughts, mostly thoughts, emotions, etc. That is the objective world there. But it is still the awareness which is looking at it. When I want to know who am I, then we are saying that we will stop the thought also. But the fact is that we are moving the awareness from the thoughts. Let the thoughts be there. There most of the people fail. Even if the thoughts is there, it is possible. Let the thoughts be there. Our awareness has to be turned towards the main. So, what we are doing it, rather than showing the thoughts, the focus is changing and we are trying to see where from that I-ness is coming. Where is the main light coming from? Now, when you turn the mirror towards the original light, is the reflected beam there anymore? It has got merged in that original light. That is what happens in Samadhi. That you come to know that you can never see that with the secondary light. The reflected light. When you turn the mirror towards the original light, the reflected light gets dissolved in the original. It becomes redundant. You cannot see the original light with that. The original light expresses itself, manifests itself, shows itself. That is why the self reveals itself. The self reveals the entire world, external world of objects, internal world of thoughts and emotions, and it reveals itself. If there is another revealer who is revealing the self, then that revealer is the self, not which is being revealed. Anything revealed is object before it. The revealer is the self. Now that is the idea of the non-interactional sadhana. So by meditation we are supposed to discover that source of our I. And to do that we have to transcend the subject-object duality, because the duality is coming when this light is showing something else. When the light is showing itself, then there is no subject, no object, no knower, no knowledge, nothing. It is all, it's called non-dual knowledge, non-dual experience. It is also called aparoksha. That is neither pratyaksha nor paroksha. It is called aparoksha. That is non-dual experience. Now this is the non-interactional sadhana, meditative sadhana. And parallelly in the interactional level, when you are not doing this, you have to do this, which I have just now explained, that samatva in all circumstances, all actions transformed into jajna, witness of gunas, impersonality, that is guna guneshu vartanta, all the functions, everything is going on in the phenomenological manner, the gunas are functioning, I am only a witness to that. Then surrender, the sublimation of ego, wherever it comes that I have done it, sublimate that by surrender. So these together, what will do? They will make your interactional life also peaceful, placid, less affected, less agitated, less selfish, less constricted, more uniform, more universal. Is it not so? That kind of a mindset is very conducive for meditation also. The normal agitation you feel when you sit for meditation, you are not able to meditate because of the fragmented mind. It is running to all the things everywhere. Because throughout the day you have done it. Throughout the day you have been thinking of all kinds of, which is not necessary at all. Somebody told you something 5 years back, suddenly it comes to your mind and you think bad about that person. He might be very happy, but you are getting miserable thinking of him. So we unnecessarily call. So when you sit in meditation, you are trying to keep your mind vacant. So all these thoughts will invade your mind more at that time. Is it not so? You ask them to, no, don't come. Why should I not come? Throughout the day you have invited us. I will come all the more. Now there is space to come. You are not doing anything. So all of them will just crowd in you. So that is why we are not successful in meditation. If you practice this during the wakeful hours, then your mind will always remain free of desires, calm. The moment you sit for meditation, automatically it will get absorbed within. So the two help each other, regenerative. That is what we have shown there. As this sadhana increases, it happens, the meditational sadhana, as you have absorption, that resha, that feeling, whatever you gain in meditation, that percolates the whole active life. So it helps you to do the interactional sadhana also. You will feel a poise, you will feel a calmness because of the meditative hours. Similarly, if you do the interactional sadhana, that will help in your meditation. So two together will go up. Your meditation also will improve and your interactional state also will be closer to the goal. So that is how you finally attain the goal. This is where Bhagavad Gita starts. You see the first block there on the left, ignorance, avidya, covers real identity, small constricted identity. That I am universal, that I am not fragmented by the body, mind, personality. This ignorance is the first culprit, or you can say the first blessings also, as in Vasishtha's case. Without that, everything will be different. It is just like I gave the other day an example. Suppose there are waves and the moon is reflected by the waves. You see the moon becoming half, three-fourths, teda-meda, dancing with the waves, etc. But is anything happening to the moon? The moon is only, the light is showing the waves and moon is reflected in the waves. But all the motion of the waves we are imposing on the moon by our delusion. Similarly, the light, what we said just now, the Atma, we were saying that who am I and all. That consciousness which is revealing everything, revealing the external world, revealing the thoughts, it just reveals. It never gets tarnished or affected or changes by anything that it reveals. A sunlight can reveal a most ugly thing and a most beautiful thing. Sunlight remains sunlight. It doesn't get changed by anything. Like that, this Atma, by revealing all the states of the mind, by revealing suffering, sorrow, revealing happiness, nothing happens to Atma. But we think that I have become sorry, I have become happy. That's a delusion because of this ignorance. That ignorance, if you can remove, all the problems will be solved. But this removal of ignorance, there are two methods. One is called Kevala Jnana Nishtha, which is the Upanishadic way. That means exclusive dedication to knowledge. But it needs a deserving candidate. We are not fit for that because we are not able to concentrate on studies, we are not able to meditate. So for us is not that goal. That is reserved for very few people who normally are not interested in the world. By nature they are not interested in the world. So they take to the study and contemplating they get to the knowledge there. But for general, for all, so to say, the sadhana is the Bhagavad Gita sadhana, which approach starts from the second step. That is, no. Desire, kama, to enjoy pleasant and abhor unpleasant. This is coming from, this kama is originating from the avidya, from the ignorance. The moment I see myself to be small, I have to run after something, I will be afraid of something, I will be attracted to something, repelled by something. So there the desire starts working and make us run around. So this kama takes to activity, desire motivated activity. You need not look into the references and all, I am not going into that. Now, whenever we do desire motivated activity, it leads to Vishaya Dhyana, constantly thinking of things to enjoy and fearful of facing unpleasant. This is what happens. This I have already explained, I will not go. But you can show the next slide, that Vishaya Dhyana. I will come back to this again. Here, just taking the example of money, we have shown Vishaya Dhyana, that need for money is the initial. When we need money, actually we need. So we strive for money, then money comes. Then money gives us comfort and all, so we start thinking about more money, more money. So constant thought of money leads to fear of losing money and greed to possess more money. Finally, money becomes a burden. It is not only the need then. It was needed for our happiness, but now it is giving rise to unhappiness, that he is richer than me, I must have this, I must have that. Will I lose? Will the government confiscate my land and everything? All those worries are coming from the being slave to money. Earlier it was not slavery. When we started having money, we were master of the money. We were enjoying life with that. But then the whole concept changes. We become slave to the money. That is what the Sangha is. Sangha to money increases and we go on, desire increases and on this cycle. Get back to the other one. So, Vishaya Dhyana increases Sangha. That increases giving rise to Kama. You remember that 2.62 or something? Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Upajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Upajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama. So it is a cycle of bondage. So as we go around the cycle, bondage deepens. The bondage increases more and more. If you try to unfold that bondage right in the childhood, it will be easier. When it has got consolidated, it becomes difficult. But never, be late than never. So it is not depressing to anybody. But it is a fact that it becomes consolidated more and more, because we go around the cycle more and more times. Show the other one. Next. Now this is Bhagavad Gita, whatever just now I explained, it is on a chart, now in a diagram, that to get rid of the desire is our primary goal. Now to get rid of the desire, Bhagavad Gita analyzes the whole personality, and so much of detail. In 18th chapter we will find how much of detail is given. That what is the seat of desire? First, to remove, we have to know where is the seat of desire, where it is sitting. We have to act there, we have to treat there. So in that shloka 3.40, he says the seat of the desire is senses, mind and intelligence. Indriyani mano buddhi asyadhishthanam uchyate. Indriyani mano buddhi asya adhishthanam uchyate. They are the seat of desire. So you have to treat the senses, the mind and the intelligence in all the places. Senses can be initially treated by discipline, not to give indulgence, to discipline to some extent. Later on it will be treated automatically by the sublimation of the mind and sublimation of the buddhi and viveka buddhi. Now for the mind and intelligence, these are the four methods, major methods Bhagavad Gita has suggested. Just now I discussed them, that the Jnana vision, Samatva attitude, Gunatita vision and surrender. Corresponding shlokas are also written there. Now, when you treat the mind and the buddhi like this, what happens is the sublimation of ego and desires. Automatically these, what they will do, they will reduce your ego and reduce your desires. So the reduction of ego and desire automatically flood your mind with a quality called placidity, prasada. That is the real prasada. A sense of placidity, because it is the desire and the ego which is not allowing our mind to become calm. Always it remains agitated, fragmented. So mind becomes uniform, placid. Sublimation of ego, desires, prasada, leading to self-experience. Now, when the mind becomes calm, placid, you will find that meditation you don't have to do. Meditation happens, meditation dawns. Automatically, when there is nothing to do, automatically, because of the prasada, mind will just settle. It will just get absorbed in the, sometimes in the infinitude, sometimes in the zero, sometimes in everything. It depends. But everywhere you feel the expansion, lightness and brilliance. So that finally, what happens is that this self-experience, which further treats the senses, mind and intelligence, when that self-experience happens, the effect of the experience falls on the senses also. Because he finds, when you find a higher joy, you don't run after the lower joy anymore. Many people, it has happened from all jazz music and all, when they go to classical, they don't no more like the modern music or jazz or so. Anything higher, when we appreciate higher and noble attitudes of mind, noble emotions of mind, you will not like the other small selfish things or so. So automatically this self-experience and the corresponding prasada starts treating the senses, mind and intelligence. So this is also a cycle, but it is a progressive cycle of purification. The earlier one was a cycle of bondage, which was going to deeper and deeper bondage. Here it is now relieving the bondage through that. But mind you, the sadhana has to be throughout the interactional period also. All those four have to be applied in the interactional period. This finally, when it relieves, the knowledge gets matured. Maturation of jnana and purity leading finally to self-realization, we say. Now, self-realization is not a one point that one fine morning you get up and find that you have become self-realized. It's a process of gradual sublimity dawning, and perhaps you can say it is never ending also, not in the terms of knowledge, but the divinity goes on increasing and increasing, never ending. You can take it to any level. Life divinized. This is what it is. Next. Na dveshtya kushalam karma.
न द्वेष्ट्य कुशलं कर्म
कुशलेनानुषज्यते
कुशलेनानुषज्यते
त्यागी सत्त्वसमाविष्टो
त्यागी सत्त्वसमाविष्टो
मेधावी छिन्न संशयः
मेधावी छिन्न संशयः
न हि देहभृता शक्यं
न हि देहभृता शक्यं
त्यक्तुं कर्माण्यशेषतः
त्यक्तुं कर्माण्यशेषतः
यस्तु कर्मफलत्यागी
यस्तु कर्मफलत्यागी
सत्यागीत्यभिधीयते
सत्यागीत्यभिधीयते.
Up to this we had done. Anishtamishtam mishram cha
अनिष्टमिष्टं मिश्रं च
त्रिविधं कर्मणः फलं
त्रिविधं कर्मणः फलं
भवत्यत्यागिनां प्रेत्य
भवत्यत्यागिनां प्रेत्य
न तु सन्न्यासिनां क्वचित्
न तु सन्न्यासिनां क्वचित्
पञ्चैतानि महाबाहो
पञ्चैतानि महाबाहो
कारणानि निबोध मे
कारणानि निबोध मे
सांख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि
साङ्ख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि
सिद्धये सर्वकर्मणाम्.
सिद्धये सर्वकर्मणाम्.
From this 13th verse, another section is starting in a way. I will again show some slides, and what I will give you a summary, otherwise these shlokas you will not be able to relate. See, whatever I am showing now, it is to find out where the confusion is there, where the desires is sitting, how to get rid of the desires, what is the redundancy of the desires, and where lies the ultimate redemption from the Sangha and Bhogecha, that is Katri Bhoktri Bhava. Now this is one section of Bhagavad Gita. Once we have understood, then the other part is that what are the elements in whenever any action is done, what are the elements of the actions? They will go on dividing that. This pancha imani or pancha etani, whatever it is, these 5 causes, then he will go on enumerating various things. These are the, say, our indriyas, our mind, buddhi, and what is the adhisthana, where is the actual action, how is the actual action performed, and each element they will divide into sattva, rajas, tamas. Say, sattvika buddhi, rajasika buddhi, tamasika buddhi. Sattvika dhruti, rajasika dhruti, tamasika dhruti. Sattvika knowledge, rajasika knowledge, tamasika knowledge. Sattvika happiness, rajasika happiness, tamasika happiness. Like that, everything will be discussed in terms of these 3 gunas. And the important point to be noted is that in all cases, when it is the sattvika part of it, through that sattvika we are able to go to that transcendence where we are not touched by the whatever happening in our being, whatever karma we do, whatever action we do. To approach that transcendental level is always through the sattvika. This is the important point. Otherwise, you will not be able to link. These are all shlokas strewn around, it will appear like. Unless we understand how things are proceeding block by block. That earlier they were mostly spending on the desire part of it, Sangha, etc. Now, how to get rid of it, that they will discuss. And in every case, to reach the transcendental level, we have to first attain the sattvika nature. That is sattvika sukha, sattvika jnana, sattvika buddhi, sattvika dhruti. And through that, it easily takes us to the transcendental level. Why? Because primarily, the sattvika nature means the unified vision.